31-year-old Kadesha Burch was shot and killed inside a home on Claybrook Avenue in Springfield on Friday. According to investigators, another woman was also shot, but she survived.
The clock struck midnight on December 27, 2024, in Springfield, Kentucky. Inside apartment 4B on Claybrook Avenue, Kadesha Burch was sleeping on her couch, a true crime documentary still playing softly on the television, a cruel irony she'd never lived to appreciate. She'd been free for exactly 96 hours. 4 days. 96 hours of believing the nightmare was finally over, of wrapping her arms around her sons, of planning a future that would never come. Outside, Roosevelt Davis III moved through the darkness like a shadow with intent. He wasn't there to talk. He wasn't there to reconcile. He was there to erase a woman who dared to survive him once before. The first sound was the splintering of wood, the kitchen window giving way under the force of a crowbar. Then came the footsteps, heavy and deliberate across the linoleum floor. Kadesha stirred, reached for her phone, her fingers trembling as she tried to dial 911. The text she managed to type would never be sent. "Someone's breaking." Her mother, Patricia Burch, emerged from the guest bedroom in her nightgown, disoriented and terrified. She'd insisted on staying that first night. Kadesha returned to the apartment, a maternal instinct that would save her life, even as it couldn't save her daughter's. Davis swung the crowbar before Patricia could scream, a sickening crack against her skull that dropped her to the floor, semi-conscious, but alive. Kadesha knew immediately who it was. She'd known the moment she heard the window break. She scrambled toward her bedroom, trying to barricade the door with her dresser, her hands shaking so badly she could barely grip the furniture. But Davis was bigger, stronger. Fueled by months of rage and humiliation, he forced the door open with his shoulder. 10 shots rang out in 8 minutes. The first 2 hit her chest, 1 struck her neck. 4 more targeted her face, a deliberate attempt to destroy not just her life, but her identity, to obliterate the woman who'd humiliated him by fighting back. Neighbors would later tell police they heard a man's voice shouting obscenities between the gunshots, then silence so complete it felt like the world had stopped breathing. At 12:24 a.m., a neighbor called 911. By 12:32 a.m., police were standing in the doorway of an execution scene. Kadesha Burch was pronounced dead where she fell. Patricia was rushed to Springfield Memorial Hospital with a fractured skull. And the most devastating detail of all was just beginning to emerge from the investigation. The charge that had put Kadesha behind bars for the past 3 months, shooting Roosevelt Davis III in October after he'd allegedly wrapped his hands around her throat and tried to strangle her. She'd claimed self-defense. She'd begged them to believe her. Instead, they arrested her while Davis walked free. Free to plan, free to arm himself, free to finish what he'd started. The system that should have protected Kadesha had instead given her killer everything he needed: time, opportunity, and 96 hours to hunt her down. They met in the spring of 2022 at a community basketball tournament in Springfield, the kind of event where local legends are made and everyone knows everyone's business. Roosevelt Davis III was the star attraction that day, a 21-year-old former high school football phenom who'd played 2 seasons at a Division II college before an injury ended his dreams of going pro. He still carried himself like he owned every room he entered, still wore his Letterman jacket like a badge of honor, still had that magnetic smile that made people forget he'd peaked at 19. Kadesha Burch was there with her 7-year-old son, cheering from the bleachers between shifts at Little Lamb's daycare where she worked. At 29, she was everything Davis wasn't: grounded, selfless, the kind of woman who remembered everyone's birthday and brought homemade cookies to church every Sunday. Friends described her as having a helper's heart, always the first to volunteer, always seeing the best in people even when they'd shown her their worst. Davis approached her after the game, all charm and compliments. He asked about her son, seemed genuinely interested in her life, offered to carry her cooler to the car. Within days, the text messages started. Good morning greetings, midday check-ins, constant communication that felt flattering at first. He sent flowers to her workplace. He showed up unannounced with dinner. He told her she was beautiful, special, different from everyone else. Her best friend Jasmine remembers the early warnings. He was always texting her. Always. If she didn't respond within 10 minutes, he'd send another message asking if she was okay, who she was with, what she was doing. But Kadesha brushed it off as romantic attention, as a man who'd finally chosen her after years of single motherhood and struggle. By late summer, the mask was slipping. Davis needed to know her location at all times. He'd drive by her apartment unannounced to make sure she was safe. He interrogated her about male co-workers, accused her of flirting with the pastor, demanded she stop wearing certain clothes because they attracted too much attention. When she announced her pregnancy that fall, Davis seemed thrilled, but the control tightened like a noose around her independence. Friends watched Kadesha withdraw. She stopped attending Bible study. She made excuses for Davis's behavior. He's just protective. He had a rough childhood. He loves me too much. She stopped posting on social media. She started checking her phone obsessively during conversations, her eyes darting to the screen like a prisoner awaiting orders. By the time their son was born in mid-2023, neighbors were hearing shouting through the walls. Police were called twice to domestic disturbances, but Kadesha always minimized what happened, always protected him, always believed he'd change. She didn't understand yet that she wasn't dating a star athlete with anger issues. She was trapped with a predator who'd chosen his prey carefully, who saw her kindness as weakness, who was building towards something far darker than either of them could have imagined. October 5th, 2024, started like any other Saturday. Kadesha dropping off her oldest son at his father's house, returning home to catch up on laundry, planning to pick up her 18-month-old from her mother's later that evening. She didn't know Roosevelt Davis was already parked outside her apartment, watching. She didn't know he'd been tracking her location through a shared phone app she'd forgotten to disable. She didn't know this would be the day everything changed. Davis let himself in through the front door. He still had a key from when they'd lived together, another thing Kadesha had been meaning to change, but hadn't gotten around to. The argument started immediately. He'd seen her Instagram story from the night before, a photo with her coworker Jasmine at a restaurant. Who was the man in the background? Why was she dressed like that? Why wasn't she answering his calls anymore? Kadesha tried to de-escalate, a skill she'd perfected over 2 years of walking on eggshells. She explained it was a girls' night out. She reminded him they weren't together anymore, that he couldn't keep showing up unannounced. That's when Davis's expression changed, from anger to something far more terrifying. Stone-cold calculation. "You think you can just leave me?" he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You think you can take my son and move on like I don't exist?" His hands were around her throat before she could answer. Kadesha clawed at his fingers, gasping for air that wouldn't come, feeling the cartilage in her neck compress under the pressure of his grip. The medical term is strangulation, and it's the single most lethal predictor of future homicide in domestic violence cases. Studies show that victims who are strangled by their partners are 750% more likely to be killed by them eventually. But Kadesha didn't know those statistics as the room started going dark. What she did know was where she'd hidden the .38 revolver in her bedroom closet, a gun her brother had insisted she keep after Davis's behavior had escalated. Somehow, through the fog of oxygen deprivation, she managed to break free long enough to stumble toward the bedroom. Davis followed, still shouting threats. Kadesha grabbed the gun with trembling hands and fired once, hitting Davis in the shoulder. The shot wasn't fatal, wasn't even close, but it was enough to make him retreat, stumbling backward and cursing as blood seeped through his shirt. He called 911 first, screaming into the phone that his crazy baby mama had just tried to murder him. When police arrived 12 minutes later, they found Davis bleeding on the front lawn, playing the victim with Oscar-worthy conviction. Kadesha tried to explain, showed them the angry red marks around her throat.
23-year-old Roosevelt Davis, who knew the two, allegedly drove from Wisconsin, broke into their home, and shot them. According to his arrest citation, Davis admitted to robbing a bank in Wisconsin and using that money to buy 2 guns. State police say Davis was arrested after a traffic stop in Shelbyville. He's now charged with murder, attempted murder, and burglary.
The defensive wound arrested that night and charged with attempted murder. Davis was treated at the hospital and released. No charges filed, no protective order issued. The justice system had made its choice about who deserved protection, and it wasn't the woman with handprints bruised into her neck. December 23, 2024, 11:42 a.m. Kadesha Burch walked through the doors of Springfield County Detention Center, blinking against sunlight she hadn't seen in 3 months. Her mother's doorbell camera captured the reunion, Kadesha dropping to her knees on the front porch, arms outstretched, as her 2 sons ran into her embrace, their small bodies colliding with hers in a tangle of tears and laughter. That night, she tucked them into bed and read stories until her voice went hoarse, savoring every moment she'd missed behind bars. That same morning, 720 miles north in Milwaukee, Roosevelt Davis III walked into the First National Bank wearing a baseball cap pulled low and a surgical mask. The robbery took 4 minutes. He passed the teller a note demanding cash, kept his hand in his jacket pocket like he had a weapon, walked out with $4,300 in unmarked bills. By evening, he'd met with an illegal gun dealer in a gas station parking lot, purchasing 2 handguns, a 9mm Glock and a .45 caliber pistol for $1,800 cash. No background check, no waiting period, no questions asked. December 24th, Kadesha spent Christmas Eve morning in her mother's kitchen, baking sugar cookies with her sons, flour dusting their faces as they pressed star-shaped cutters into dough. She posted a photo on Instagram, making memories with my babies. So grateful for second chances. That afternoon, she wrapped presents her friends had purchased while she was locked up. Toy trucks, superhero action figures, winter coats her boys desperately needed. That evening, the family attended Christmas Eve service at New Hope Baptist Church, where Kadesha held her youngest son on her lap and sang hymns with tears streaming down her face. Davis spent December 24 at Walmart, purchasing camouflage clothing, black gloves, duct tape, and a large duffel bag. Security footage shows him moving through the aisles with methodical purpose, no hesitation, no browsing. That evening at 7:23 p.m., he began the 720-mile drive from Milwaukee to Springfield, his GPS locked on Claybrook Avenue. His phone records show multiple calls to a cousin in Springfield, asking questions about Kadesha's whereabouts, whether she'd been seen around town. December 25th, Christmas morning brought squeals of joy as Kadesha's sons tore into their presents. Video on her phone captures her oldest son shouting, "This is the best Christmas ever, Mama." That afternoon, the family gathered at Patricia's house for dinner. Ham, macaroni and cheese, collard greens, pecan pie. Kadesha was radiant, making plans to relocate to Tennessee in the new year, talking about opening her own salon someday. At 9:13 p.m., she texted Jasmine, "I need to reclaim my home. New year, new beginning." Davis crossed the Kentucky state line at 11:42 a.m., confirmed by cell tower data. By 2:17 p.m., he'd checked into the Springfield Economy Lodge, paying cash, carrying only his duffel bag. At 6:42 p.m., a neighbor's security camera caught his car driving past Patricia Burch's house 3 times. Slow, deliberate passes, surveillance masquerading as casual driving. December 26th. Kadesha spent the day cleaning her apartment, setting up her sons' bedrooms with fresh sheets and new toys, preparing for their return the next day. She met with her attorney that afternoon, optimistic about her self-defense case. Her final social media post came at 7:23 p.m., a photo of her spotless living room captioned, "Home sweet home, ready for our new start." That night, she fell asleep on her couch feeling safe for the first time in months. Davis spent December 26 at a hardware store, purchasing a crowbar and bolt cutters. He drove through Kadesha's neighborhood multiple times, memorizing entry points and escape routes. In his car, police would later find a hand-drawn map of her apartment complex, with arrows marking her unit. As midnight approached December 27th, both guns were loaded. The countdown had reached 0. 12:13 a.m., Roosevelt Davis III approached apartment 4B wearing full camouflage, a crowbar gripped in one hand, the 9mm Glock tucked into his waistband. The front door's deadbolt stopped him. Kadesha had finally changed the locks, but the kitchen window was older, weaker. 2 strikes with the crowbar and the glass shattered inward, the sound like a gunshot in the sleeping neighborhood. 12:15 a.m. Inside, Kadesha jolted awake on the couch, her heart already racing before her mind fully processed what was happening. She grabbed her phone, fingers fumbling across the screen. The text message to 911 would never be completed. "Someone's breaking!" Her mother appeared in the hallway, eyes wide with confusion and terror, her gray nightgown ghostly in the dim light filtering through the windows. Patricia Burch never saw the crowbar coming. The blow caught her across the left temple with a sickening crack that echoed through the small apartment. She crumpled to the floor, semi-conscious, blood pooling beneath her head. Later, she would tell investigators, "I couldn't move, but I could hear everything. I heard my baby girl begging for her life." 12:17 m. Kadesha ran for her bedroom, her bare feet slipping on the hardwood floor. She threw her weight against the door, trying to shove her dresser in front of it with strength born from pure adrenaline and terror. But Davis was bigger, stronger, and fueled by 3 months of festering rage. He slammed his shoulder into the door once, twice, 3 times. The dresser scraped across the floor. The door burst open. "You thought you could shoot me and get away with it?" Davis's voice was eerily calm, almost conversational. "I told you I'd make you pay." 12:18 m. The first shot hit Kadesha in the chest as she backed toward the window, her hands raised in a futile gesture of surrender. She stumbled, gasping, her legs giving out beneath her. The second shot struck her shoulder, the third her neck. She was already dying when Davis moved closer, standing over her as she lay on the bedroom floor. 12:19 m. 4 more shots to her face, methodical, deliberate, personal. The medical examiner would later testify that these final shots suggested deeply personal motivation, an attempt to destroy her identity entirely. Neighbors heard the gunfire, heard a man's voice shouting obscenities they couldn't make out. Then silence, so absolute it felt suffocating. 12:21 a.m., the final shot, 8 minutes from break-in to execution. 12:24 a.m., a neighbor dialed 911, voice shaking. "I heard shots fired, multiple shots, on Claybrook Avenue." 12:32 a.m., police arrived to find the front door slightly ajar, swinging in the cold December wind. Inside, they discovered a scene of calculated brutality. Kadesha Burch was pronounced dead at the scene. Patricia was rushed to Springfield Memorial Hospital with critical injuries. 3:17 a.m., Roosevelt Davis III walked into Springfield Police Department headquarters with the 9mm Glock still tucked in his waistband. Security footage captured his casual demeanor as he approached the front desk. To the night sergeant, he said simply, "I just killed Kadesha Burch. She shot me in October, so I shot her tonight." In his car outside, police found the .45 caliber pistol, the crowbar still stained with Patricia's blood, bolt cutters, duct tape, and the hand-drawn map of Kadesha's apartment. During his interview, Davis showed no remorse, no hesitation. "She thought she could shoot me and get away with it. I showed her she was wrong." A detective with 20 years of experience would later describe it as one of the coldest confessions I've ever heard. The number haunts every domestic violence expert who reviewed Kadesha Burch's case, 750%. That's how much more likely a woman is to be killed by her partner if he has previously strangled her. It's not just a statistic, it's a flashing red warning sign that law enforcement and the justice system are trained to recognize. When someone wraps their hands around their partner's throat, they are demonstrating both the ability and willingness to kill. The October strangulation should have triggered immediate intervention, a protective order, a lethality assessment, mandatory monitoring of Roosevelt Davis. Instead, the system arrested the victim and freed the predator. Dr. Rachel Simmons, a forensic psychologist who has testified in hundreds of domestic violence cases, reviewed the evidence at the request of Kadesha's family. Every single warning sign was present and ignored, she said. Strangulation, escalating violence, obsessive control, threats to harm her if she left. The justice system had all the information it needed to predict this outcome. They chose not to act. The bias is undeniable and well documented. Women who defend themselves, particularly black women, are disproportionately arrested and prosecuted, even when they have visible injuries and credible claims of self-defense. Meanwhile, their abusers are believed, coddled, released without charges. Attorney Maya Henderson, who has dedicated her career to defending domestic violence survivors, calls it systemic betrayal. She explains, "We tell women to fight back, to protect themselves, to not be victims. Then when they do exactly that, we punish them for it. We criminalize their survival." Kadesha's 2 sons, now aged 8 and 2, are being raised by their grandmother Patricia, who survived the attack but carries both physical and psychological scars. The boys don't know the full story yet. How could anyone explain to children that their mother was murdered by their baby brother's father? That the system that should have protected her instead delivered her into his hands? Patricia has placed family photos throughout her home, keeps Kadesha's memory alive through stories and bedtime prayers, and attends therapy twice a week to process the nightmare of hearing her daughter's final moments. On January 15, 2025, the Springfield community renamed the local domestic violence shelter Kadesha's House in her honor. A scholarship fund was established for single mothers pursuing education. But her family wants more than memorials. They want systemic change. They're demanding mandatory lethality assessments in all domestic violence cases involving strangulation. They're calling for interstate communication protocols so abusers can't cross state lines unmonitored. They're advocating for legal protections for victims who defend themselves and an end to the criminalization of survival. Kadesha Burch should be alive today. She should be watching her sons grow up, opening that salon she dreamed about, celebrating Christmas mornings and birthday parties. Instead, she's a statistic. Another woman failed by a system that chose to believe her abuser over her bruises, that valued a celebrity athlete's reputation over a mother's right to breathe. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please reach out. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is available 24/7 at 1-800-799-7233. If you see the warning signs, especially strangulation, speak up. Report it. Believe victims. Push for protective orders. Don't let another Kadesha fall through the cracks of a broken system. Her life mattered. Her story matters. And the question that should haunt us all is this: how many more women have to die before we finally believe them when they say they're in danger? If this story moved you, if it made you angry, if it made you want to see change, subscribe to this channel. We're committed to telling the stories that expose systemic failures and demand justice for those who can't speak for themselves. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join us in spreading awareness. Share this story. Demand change, because the next 96 hours could be someone else's countdown to tragedy unless we act now.